Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this evening's event, Doing Black Feminism in Public. We will begin at 6:45 p.m. Thank you so much for your patience.
Good evening, everyone. Good. What an auspicious evening. What a beautiful night. And what a lovely thing to look out and see all of you as we come together to celebrate the R.A.G.E Lab and to celebrate this conversation, which, if I may say, is an historic conversation between Brittney Cooper and Roxane Gay. The R.A.G.E Lab, the Rutgers Race and Gender Equity Lab, launches its first signature initiative, Black Feminism in the Public Sphere, with a special event entitled Doing Black Feminism in Public, a conversation with Dr. Brittney Cooper, Professor of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies and Africana Studies, and Principal Investigator of the R.A.G.E Lab, and Dr. Roxane Gay, author of the New York Times bestselling books, Bad Feminist and Hunger, and the current Gloria Steinem Endowed Chair in Media, Culture, and Feminist Studies at Rutgers University. I am Professor Ethel Brooks. I am chair of the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies Department at Rutgers University, where I am honored and thrilled to count Brittney and Roxane as my colleagues. And I want to welcome you all and tell you that today we will listen and we will participate and we will engage together. And I told Brittney that I wanted to sort of break out singing, but I'm going to refrain. And instead, I want to introduce my dear colleague and friend, Dr. Brittney Cooper, who comes to us with a PhD in American Studies from Emory and a BA in English and Political Science from Howard University. Brittney Cooper is a professor of women's gender and sexuality studies, has been my colleague for more than a decade, and she is the principal investigator, inspiration, intellectual author, and founding director of the Race and Gender Equity R.A.G.E Lab at Rutgers University. Dr. Cooper's books include Beyond Respectability, The Intellectual Thought of Race Women, which was winner of the 2018 Merle Curti Prize for the best book in U.S. intellectual history from the Organization of American Historians, as well as the New York Times bestseller Eloquent Rage, A Black Feminist Discovers Her Superpower, Feminist AF, A Guide to Crushing Girlhood, co-authored with Susanna Morris and Chanel Kraft-Tanner, which was a Kirkus Top Young Adult Book of 2021 and a nominee for the Garden State Teen Book Award from the New Jersey Library Association, as well as Stand Up, 10 Mighty Women Who Made a Change, and everything that brought her to this place, the Crunk Feminist Collection, co-edited with Susanna Morris and Robin Boylorn. Dr. Cooper co-founded the Crunk Feminist Collective, a hip-hop generation feminist collective of women of color, of activists and scholars. And they ran the highly successful Crunk Feminist Collective blog, which was named a top blog by New York Magazine in 2011. Today, they co-edit The Remix, a weekly Substack newsletter. And without further ado, I want to thank you all for coming here, and I want to invite Professor Brittney Cooper to the stage.
What's up? Good evening. Thank you to Dr. Ethel Brooks, who is my colleague, who is a formidable public intellectual, sociologist, political scientist, many of those social sciences, all in your own right, is globally renowned for her work on Romani feminisms, and is really kind of helping to lead the charge for how we want to think about what it means to do accessible scholarship that is committed to social justice. So thank you so much for your support. I appreciate you, and welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming out. I hear there was terrible traffic, so thank you for dealing with that. This is the inaugural event of the Black Feminism in the Public Sphere initiative, which is the first signature initiative of R.A.G.E Lab, which is my new playground of sorts, where We will seek to innovate and do accessible scholarship that studies and thinks about critically the lives of Black women and girls, that supports emerging scholars who want to think and talk publicly and accessibly about what it means for Black women and girls to be able to thrive. And, to think about different models for how we do public scholarship. And we also want to think about the barriers to our ability to do that. These are dangerous times to stand flat-footed and tell the truth about an empire that is in decline. And about a country that is hell-bent on returning to environs that we thought we perhaps had left circa 1865. And so we have to be fearless and fierce and fervent in our willingness to tell the truth, and we have to equip new generations of people to be able to do that. And we also have to expose the folks who would try to keep us from doing it, which is to say that I like to fight. I'm ready for a fight. And my contention in Eloquent Rage was that rage does not have to be a destructive force. It can be a productive force. And now it's time for us to show what it actually means to build, with rage at the core of what we do. And so, these are times where we need the fierce and unapologetic vision of women who are good with being bad, women who are rabble-rousers by nature, women who embrace the label of being difficult, women who have opinions and are proud of it. Auspicious beginnings need audacious thinkers, and it is my pleasure tonight to be in conversation with a thinker that I have long admired and whose work I have long appreciated. As you heard, Dr. Roxane Gay is the current Gloria Steinem Endowed Chair in Media, Culture, and Feminist Studies here at Rutgers, but you may know her as an opinion columnist at the New York Times or as author of the New York Times bestsellers Hunger and Bad Feminist. You might also be eager to purchase her latest book, Opinions, which comes out next month. And until then, you can sustain yourself by reading her weekly Substack newsletter, The Audacity, a place that I think of as a feminist world-building project where a Black woman with an eye towards good writing introduces us to the thinkers she thinks we need, and I think it's real cool that a Black woman has the platform to tell the rest of us what to think, because when does that ever happen? So tonight, join me and Roxane, and let's talk about what it means to do Black feminism in public. Mics on? Are these mics on? They are on. All right, very good. You good? Oh, Lord. I talked to them about these chairs, girl, but...
Well, you know what? I have sat in so many worse chairs. I could write a whole book. Oh, wait, I did.
That's right. Look, we got to build a world that is accessible, because I'm like, fat girls be out here winning and helping the rest of y'all. And we need to sit in comfortable chairs. There's that. So, Roxane, thank you so much for agreeing to do this, and just for your fierce work in the world and your presence.
Thank you, Brittney, and thank you for your work in the world. It's awesome to be here.
Let me tell y'all, I love that there's this moment in 2014. We used to have a Barnes & Noble on Route 1 in North Brunswick, and I was walking down an aisle, and I looked up and I saw a book. The title of it was Bad Feminist, and I was like, wait, what the hell? What is this? And I picked that book up off the shelf, and I was like, and this is a Black woman who wrote this book, and that was amazing to me. And I really think that so much of the work that we have seen over the last decade, this kind of explosion of new voices in feminist writing, Roxane opened the door for that by proving that there was a market for a new generation of feminist writers, and so I'm deeply appreciative. My book is one of the books she opened the door for. So without knowing it, but I know what the conversations with the editors were. So.
We already have a book of essays by a Black woman.
Correct. What are you going to say, right? So yours was a circuitous route to the life of being a public feminist. And we have some students in the audience tonight who are navigating this pressure to be linear, to complete in 4 years, to get a degree, and then to quote unquote be successful. And I wonder what set of things you wish someone had said to you as a college student and young woman who is finding your voice and navigating trauma all at the same time?
That's a great question. Well, you know, a lot of times we tell students things, and not we, but we know who, tells us things in college that are treated as sacred truths. And I wish someone had told me grades don't matter. Literally, no one's ever going to ask you for your grades again, unless you go to grad school, and even then, nobody cares. So I wish I had spent less time believing I had to get straight A's and that was somehow a measure of my worth. And I wish I had done more to experience life beyond the classroom. I did do some extracurriculars with theater, and I loved it very much, and probably too much in terms of never going to class. But I didn't need to go to class to get an A, so, I mean, it's not my fault. But I just wish I had immersed myself more in campus culture and had spent less time stressing about grades and more time enjoying what I was learning, because I do love learning, and I don't even mind school necessarily. I just mind the ways that school tries to reify a lot of the very things that are very harmful to Black women, to Black people, to people of color, to queer people. You know, you don't know what to question until you know what to question, and I think if I had spent more time living during my early college years, I would have known what to question far sooner than I did.
Yeah. One of the things that intrigued me, so your colleague and collaborator, Dr. Tressie McMillan Cottom, has talked about the fact that you guys met on LiveJournal, which is, for those of you who don't know, like a very early kind of blogging site, right? So in many ways, y'all were digital feminist pioneers. And I wonder, did you see the potential of the digital back then? Did you think that it would like galvanize movements in the ways that it has done?
I did. Back in the old times, we used to get on the internet with something called a modem. And you had to use your phone line to dial into the internet. And your parents, perhaps, would get furious when you spent 10 hours on the phone so that nobody could call in. And certainly no one could call out. But I was a very early adopter of the internet. I got online in 1992 when I was 17 years old. Oh my God, guys. Thank you for making me feel even fucking older. Appreciate that. But I got online at 17. I was a senior in high school and then a freshman in college that year. And we had just gotten computers on campus at Exeter, where I went to high school. And I was just like, wow. I can talk to strange men all night. Amazing. And what I loved about the internet in the early days was that I could communicate with people from all around the world and be whoever I wanted. And certainly at that time in my life, I did want to be anyone but me. But the older I got and the more focused I became in how I engaged with the internet, the more I was able to appreciate the way that it democratized communication for marginalized communities. In many ways, all of us were created equal on a platform like LiveJournal and later Tumblr, because all you needed was an internet connection. Now, certainly that does mean that there are people who are excluded, because you have to have access to a computer and reliable internet to engage with the internet. But it was democratizing in a way that nothing had been before, or few things in terms of reach in particular, because certainly writing just pen and paper, that's kind of democratic, but then how do you put that message in front of people? So I did understand the power and the potential and the reach very early on, and I loved it because I felt very impotent as a person and very unseen, and I was unseen as a person, and that's okay, but I was not unheard, and that meant a lot.
So what do we do now in the era where we're seeing the active, rapid dissolution intentionally of all of these digital communities? Because you sort of have a take no prisoners kind of persona online. You will give people the business, which I love, but it seems like the stakes are higher and higher to be able to do that.
They are. The internet is evolving in ways that, I mean, I don't know that anyone could foresee the way the internet would evolve. I think people tried, but people are unpredictable. And so what we use ends up becoming unpredictable as well. And what's happening online now is that I think we're seeing this calcification, where people are no longer interested in engaging with alternative points of view. Instead, we are just so determined to be right about everything all the time that we create really high stakes for even the most innocuous interactions. And it makes going on the internet profoundly unpleasant. I don't even log on to Twitter that much anymore. And yes, it is still Twitter.
Not X, correct.
Because everyone seems to be hell-bent on policing everyone else. And it's like, oh, when did we want to do that? How about we all mind our own business a little bit more and stop trying to control the ways that other people express themselves, the way that other people think? Now, I'm not talking about extremism. Now, extremists, yes, we need to tell them, hey, you are dumb and wrong, and you have one tooth. So perhaps you are not part of the master race. Just a guess. But no, but really, there's this guy online, and I'm not going to say his name, but he's talking about white supremacy all the time, and he called the new April in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ugly. And when you look at this man, it's like the audacity. The absolute audacity. So I'm glad that we can still say that online. And in person, the audacity. Sir, it's called a mirror.
Correct. So I guess, I want to step back for a moment. So here I was, like I said, walking down an aisle nearly 10 years ago now when Bad Feminist came out and made you a household name. You've written a book before then, but that is when everyone came to know you. And so now, here we are 10 years in, and I teach the title essay in that book. I'm teaching it this week. And in that essay, it's like you are making the case for a feminism that is complicated and complex, and where we don't have to be good and we don't have to be perfect and we don't have to get it right. And it seems at that time that there needed to be a case made. Do you feel like there's still the same trepidation about being feminist given the political climate?
I do, unfortunately. So many young women to this day continue to ask me, oftentimes at events like this, if it's okay if they believe in feminism but don't publicly claim it. For whatever reason, the stigma around feminism remains. And that is sad, that no matter how much progress we make as feminists, we're still also having Feminism 101 conversations, like, can I call myself a feminist? Call yourself whatever you want, sweetheart, but do feminism and be a feminist in deed, if not in word. And it's just a shame that we have to say this over and over, but I also accept that we have to say this over and over, and that's okay. That's just part and parcel of the work. And so what I try to do now is continue to say that over and over while also advancing other ideas. We're going to do Feminism 101 and 301 at the same time. And hopefully that message will reach at least some people. You're never going to reach everyone, and that shouldn't actually be your goal, but I think just one person at a time will still make some kind of progress.
And so what is a new idea that you think that we need to be thinking more about in this moment? Because it strikes me that, I was like, so Bad Feminist comes out in the Barack Obama era, and there was a way that we thought history was moving sort of forward. And now we see a reversal, a very hard reversal. And so I wonder, what is the messaging you think we need to be having in this moment around feminism?
Well, one of the key things I think is that we need to acknowledge our successes and our wins. Progressives have a really fundamental problem with acknowledging progress. I think if progress isn't huge and sweeping, we don't acknowledge it. We don't think it's enough, but incremental change is still change, and those increments start to add up. And so the fight absolutely is as urgent as it ever has been, and frankly, right now, I do think in many ways it is far more urgent because of the ground we've lost over the past 6 years. But for example, a lot of times people say Joe Biden, you know, he's so old, which yes, the gerontocracy has to go. But in the meantime, let's look at what he's actually done, and he has done a whole lot. The student loan thing in particular,
Yes, correct.
is really outstanding. I have 5 payments left. Oh, I'm so excited. You don't want to know my student loan balance, but it's not cute. And it's 6 figures, so I'm just like, all right, hail Joe Biden. But no, in all seriousness, for people who really actually need that forgiveness, and it's not even, I mean, I'm going through the traditional, I don't qualify for Biden's forgiveness, but the people that do need it. They are the people that cannot afford $200, $300, $500, $800, $1,000 a month in student loans, and they have enjoyed the past 3 years without paying student loans, which lets us all know that we actually don't need to repay them.
That's right.
And so when we see change like that, what that does is provide economic freedom and opportunity for people who have not had it for up to 20 years of their lives. There are people in their 70s, 80s, and sometimes 90s who are still paying student loans. Something is wrong. And the fact that he at least tried to do something, I think it's really important to acknowledge it, or the next Democrat, who I will not necessarily say is a progressive, is going to say, well, look what they did to Joe. Why bother? Let's pick another thing. And so while we hold this administration's feet to the fire, and we should make that fire quite warm, I think we also have to look at progress. And that's really what I want to tell young feminists. Yes, do not temper your message, do not temper your anger, do not temper your fight, but let's remember that we are making progress. We are not in 1906, 1919, 1929. As bad as things may seem, it has been much worse. And if we don't acknowledge that, we will, I think, lose energy for the fight. We'll just give up. And you see it already, and that is a problem.
And it, you know, I want to stick with that point just for a minute, because I share your frustration. And I think that some of it is that we reproduce this in academia. It's critique over everything, right? And it feels like we're also creating a situation where the left just is eating itself, you know? And Twitter seems to, whatever that is now, to like be driving our ability to sort of go at each other. And we think that it's without consequence, you know?
Yes, and as someone who is a cultural critic, I believe in the importance of criticism. I think lots of amazing work happens in the space of criticism, but not everything needs to be criticized all the time. What else are we capable of? We're capable of so much more. And somewhere along the way, I think we got so caught up in criticism and the immediate gratification that comes from people saying like, yes, queen, and all of that, that we decided that was enough to sustain us, rather than to do the long, slow, hard work that is not going to provide that instant gratification. And I really do hope that we can course correct, because I have found online in particular lately, people don't want to enjoy anything. Like, there's no oxygen around anyone. You know, you talk about like, oh, I enjoyed this movie I just saw with some actor, and someone will say, well, in 1976, they did blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, Encyclopedia Brown, I hear you, that's fucked up. But I also didn't know that when I saw the movie that I enjoyed. And that will, of course, give me new information, but like, calm down. Like, this is not the fight at all. And so like, let us remember what the fight actually is, and that the fight is not among us. I think that discord among us is healthy, but when we start to discount one another because we are not 100% aligned, what we do is weaken ourselves. And when you look at conservatives, they are consistent and they are united. And they are on point and on message at all times. And until we get our shit together to do that, we will continue to stay losing. And that frustrates me, because what we have to sell, so to speak, is very popular. Like freedom, bodily autonomy, the right to love who you want to love, economic equity. Like, these are great things. Like, how do you not sell people on the idea that everyone deserves access to health care? That health care should be a right and not a privilege. Right. Like, that's an easy sell. I spent my summer working and then the last part of my summer traveling. And I went to like 8 different countries. And they were countries of different levels of access and sort of privilege, but in every single country I visited, they had universal health care. Now, it wasn't always great. Uzbekistan, the healthcare, they were like, we go to India. And I thought, okay. But they had it. And they think that the rest of the world looks at us and thinks it's completely batshit what we have going on here. And it is completely batshit. And so the fact that we cannot harness amazing ideas and programs and sell it to the majority of people in this country who, quite frankly, would benefit. When Obamacare, or ACA, went into effect, I was living in rural Indiana. And when I tell you that you could not get in to see your doctor for the first year afterwards, like all of these people who vote against their own interests at times were lined up to get that good health care. And so we have to remember to coalesce and communicate more effectively, because we are selling the good shit.
That's right. The good shit is ours. It's true. So when we were together some months ago doing the workshop that you did in March, we talked about writing, and you said that you read a lot of writing every day. Most of it is not good. And so I have like a few questions about that. What does good writing mean to you? Yeah.
It can mean a lot of different things, but at a fundamental level, I just want to enjoy myself. I read for pleasure primarily, and I always have, and I always will. I love reading. I read every day. And so hold my interest. Tell me something interesting, even if it's something I've heard before, like tell it slant, tell it differently. Just hold my attention and don't waste my time with nonsense. And unfortunately, there are a lot of time wasters who have access to publishing.
Yes. What do you think is like at the root of this? Is it the ease of access? Like I find that folks are like, well, I write really wonderful paragraphs in my Instagram feed, and so now I am a writer. And it's like,
you know, when people say that, I just say, yes, you are. Because it doesn't take anything away from me to let other people believe that they are a writer if they want to call that writing. Now, I may not consider that writing, but I'm not going to yuck your yum. But I do think that people, because we can write paragraphs on Facebook or Instagram, they diminish what good writing is and what good writing requires.
Come on. Yeah.
And so, and then also like this culture of unnecessary affirmation where people are afraid of criticism. I mean, I don't like criticism, to be frank. I find it painful and mean, but I need it to grow, to evolve. I will listen to it after I cry. Thank you. But, you know, like, so many people just believe, like, if I write something, it is good. And it's like, oh, I think you need to read back what you wrote and get real. And that's why in my classes, I love my students. They're wonderful, but I'm very real with them. Like, I will write a WTF in the margin of a crazy sentence. Like, and I will tell them, read this out loud to me. And then they read it out loud and they're like, And I'm like, okay, we can move on. Because we just have to take more care and more time and then listen when we're given feedback. You don't have to take every piece of feedback, but you do need to really start to get honest with yourself. Like, is there something to that feedback? Let me humble myself and change what needs to be changed. And if more people just did that and took a little more time, I think we would see better work. But it's hard for young writers to do that because, especially when you first start publishing online, there's a lot of churn where you're expected to write in response to current events in a matter of hours, if not overnight. And you can do it, but are you putting your best work out when you do that? As you well know, no, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so until you get deeper in your career where you are afforded more time and more editing, you can't, if you're trying to make a living as a writer, you can't really take that time to improve. And so I also have a lot of patience for some of the bad writing I see in the world because I know where it comes from.
So what do you think that AI is going to do to the world of writing. You know,
It's not going to do shit. No, really. I refuse to learn about AI. I'm like, no, I don't care. I know that and I'm very future thinking. Like when that little Apple headset comes out in January, spatial computing, I'm going to buy that shit. I will be first in line. So I love technology. I love advancement. But AI is not there yet, because right now AI learning is happening with copyrighted material, and there are finna be some major lawsuits. I'm in one of them. Hell yes. Like, no, you're gonna have to pay me to learn off my books.
That's right.
Just like people do at the library. They buy those books. So I think that we need to be mindful that AI is coming, that it's not only coming, it's here, but the current iteration of AI is not going to last, because right now people just have their AI things, for lack of a better word, crawling across the internet, just eating up people's content. But people are aware now that their books are writers in particular, their books are being used to train AI, and copyright laws does not allow for that yet. So we're going to see, I think, a pause in the same way that Bitcoin, people were like, Bitcoin, 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 and all that other fake money. And now you don't hear shit about it at all. Like, whatever those Bitcoin people are doing, they're like, shh. Let's not tell anybody about this fake money until we figure out it's real or not. And I think we're going to see that with AI. So it's not going away, but I think it is going to step back and figure its stuff out. That said, people are using AI, like The Onion uses AI to write articles and so on. It's terrible. Not The Onion, the AV Club. And it's terrible. Like, you can tell. There's no heart, there's no soul, there's no intelligence there. It's literally machine written, and you can tell. And so there are going to be a group of people, a class of people that are comfortable reading bullshit, but most people are not going to have patience for it. And they're certainly not going to pay for it, I would like to believe. I hope I'm right.
Yes. So one of the things that I admire about your career is that you write across so many different genres. So you're a novelist, opinion writer, essayist, and even World of Wakanda, so comic books. So talk to us a little bit about, like, what's the difference between doing, like, graphic novels and doing regular novels or other kinds of writing?
Well, storytelling is storytelling. And so several years ago now, Ta-Nehisi Coates came up to me and he was like, yo, I'm working with Marvel, and I'm writing Black Panther. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, do you want to work on a Black Panther comic book? And I was like, sure. I thought he meant some other Marvel, like a little Marvel. And he was like, all right, I'm going to talk to my editor and I'll be back in touch in 2 weeks, bet. And he was living in Paris at the time to learn French, as one does. And so it was like, for him, 6 in the morning, and for me it was midnight. And I was like, okay. And I forgot about it because I have so much going on. And then 2 weeks later, he was like, here, I'm introducing you to my editor, Will. And Will's email was like will@marvel.com. And I was just like, wow, this little upstart is bold, taking Marvel's name. And I can't believe that Marvel hasn't come back and tried to get their shit back. And that's when I realized, oh, he meant Marvel. And so to be able to write a Black Panther comic was incredible. And then they used my characters in Wakanda Forever, which was amazing. Of course, you don't see any money from it, because when you write for Marvel, that's some flat fee shit right there. And they're like, we own everything you did. Okay, but that's all right, because I know that's my shit on the screen. And so it's just exciting to be at a point in my career where people trust me to take on these new opportunities, and where I trust myself to learn and engage with these new opportunities. Now, there are things I won't do. I can't write a poem. I'm bad at it. I've written like 4 poems, then the best of them is called Tears. And the first line is, I am crying tears. So just so you know, it's not gonna happen. Songwriting, no. But new genres like film and television, hell yes. even though we're on strike right now. I love writing for film and television. I love writing graphic novels, which I've now written 3. I just love storytelling, and I am very mindful that for someone like me to be afforded these opportunities is unique. And what it also allows me to do is make sure that I'm not the only. I'm often the first. I was the first Black woman to lead a Marvel title. And that fucked me up because I didn't know when I said yes, and that was 2018. So it's just like, y'all have been around for like 50 years. Like, what's up? How did it take this long? But I know I wasn't the last. And I made sure of that because I recommended 5 other Black women to be able to write, and 3 of them have written Marvel titles now. And that's awesome. And also Ta-Nehisi opened the door for all of us, and he also brought in Yona Harvey and several other amazing Black writers. So even though he doesn't do the internet anymore, and with good reason, he is an opener and a ladder builder, and I owe so much to him. And his example has also inspired me to also be able to do what he does. And so it's just great all around. No complaints.
Yes. So you mentioned TV and film. You know, we have had this explosion of kind of like Black creative ferment, I would say in the post-scandal era, and just kind of the opening up of things. Do you think that we're going to see, because of this, not because of the strikes, because of their refusal to pay people, let me frame it properly, a kind of contraction of that creative ferment, you know?
I think we're going to see some contraction, but I don't think it's going to be significant. I mean, it's going to feel significant to those who are contracted, but I think that it's going to, I think that we've made enough progress, however incremental. Like, we're not going back. We are telling our stories now in film and television, and we're finally starting to tell stories that are not rooted in slavery. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I do think that Black creative expression can accommodate joy and can accommodate, like, Scandal. Scandal was great. And I like Shonda. Shonda is a fierce person. She's just, she's a force. She is a force. And the fact that she was able to put that on ABC and sustain it for as long as she did, like, let's put credit where it belongs. Like, let's give her her flowers. People, you know, love to like talk out the side of their face, but come on, like, let's acknowledge what this woman did, and then also created a pathway for others to tell those kinds of stories. And so we are telling these stories. The Shy on Showtime. It's a UK show, but Top Boy is really good. The college campus show, Dear White People, so good, so interesting, so original. And we're also finally just getting our little toes in, like, the quirky. Like, I want all of the Black Wes Andersons. Not Wes Anderson. Yes, Wes Anderson, the quirky guy who always does the weird colory things. That we're finally starting to see a few Black weird stories. There's one on one of the streamers, and I'm forgetting the name, but it's about this kid who's like 20 feet tall. It's amazing. It's messy. It needs work, but it's good. Like, under like the flaws is a really weird, interesting show. And that we're getting to tell those stories is awesome. Not enough of us are getting to tell those stories, but it's a start. And again, acknowledging that is so important. And the strike sucks, and I hope it ends very soon. And I have 4 projects right now, and I suspect at least 2 of them are going to get canceled because of the strike, and that sucks. But I know that some of us are still going to make it through and pull others with us. And you know, the thing about progress is that once we realize what we've been missing out on, like, we're not going back. You might think you're going to push us back, but we're not going. So better make some room.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm hopeful that the pushback won't be so hard. So 2 more questions. So Sarah, you can start gathering some questions to bring me from online. from our folks watching online. Hey to y'all who are watching online, thank you for tuning in. So one of my friends says she doesn't feel like a writer because she doesn't write every day. Do you feel like a writer has to write every day?
No. I think some writers need to write every day, and I'm one of those writers. For me, it's a muscle. It needs to be exercised. And so, here's the thing, though. When I say I write every day, I do, but I may not write anything worth a damn today. I will have put some words on the page. That's it. And I think that people need to recognize that writing every day does not mean producing masterpieces every day. It just means acknowledging the practice and doing something. And I find even at the end of the day when I haven't written, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to do it. I don't have the energy. But once I start, it actually most of the time feels pretty good. But there are writers who don't write regularly. There are writers who have children, which God bless you. Everyone's always like, how are you so productive? I don't have kids. And that's awesome. I love kids. They're great. I wouldn't mind children. However, they get in the way. I watch the way, like, when my niece stays with us, I'm just like, how many more questions are you going to... It's like this girl gets paid by the word. She starts talking, and then she'll even, like, talk all through the day. It's 10 o'clock. We put her in bed, and she's still, like, murmuring in her sleep. And I'm just like, how am I supposed to write under these conditions? This is abusive. And so I think that people with parents or who are doing elder care or anything else that requires time and energy are maybe not going to be able to sit in front of the computer every day or the pad of paper, whatever. There are people who only write when they feel like the creative urge, and maybe that's 3 times a year. That's okay. You're still a writer. I think if you know you're a writer, you know you're a writer, and you shouldn't feel like there are metrics that you need to meet in order to be a writer and that you need someone else's imprimatur to believe that you're a writer. I generally, when someone tells me they're a writer, I'm like, I believe you. I mean, yeah. Like, what are you working on?
Yeah.
Sometimes the answer is nothing, and I'm like, who among us?
Yes. So this is a question that I have become increasingly interested in anytime I meet powerful women. My contention is that Black women typically are theorizing and have a theory of power that undergirds what they do, and folks don't see it because they don't see Black women as theorists. So I wonder what your theory of power is.
Oh, yes, right? I heard that, and you're right. That is a great question. And thank you for asking that question, and I'm going to tell you why. As you well know, oftentimes when Black women engage in public speaking, people think it's going to be more like a sermon, and that you're there to uplift and provide them with, like, hope. And I don't personally traffic in hope. I'm a realist and a Libra, so no. And they oftentimes believe that our work is an emotional utterance, that it is driven by feeling, and that there is no theoretical underpinning.
Come on.
And it's like, I have a PhD.
That's right.
In rhetoric and technical communication. You feel that way because there is a theoretical framework informing what I wrote to get you to feel that way.
That's right. Come on. You are preaching a little bit now, though.
Yes. Oh, damn, they're right. So I would say that, my theory of power is that power is often much subtler than we recognize. People tend to think of power as oppressive because we are all very familiar with oppressive forms of power. But I believe in a quiet power that underpins almost everything. And sometimes the quietest, meekest person in the room is exerting the most power. And I'm always paying attention to that person. Like, that's the scary person. It's not the one who's, like, blustering. And I've lived most of my life in the Midwest in open carry states. And there's always some guy at the gas station at 8 a.m. getting a breakfast sandwich with a pistol on his waist. And it's like, oh, okay there, Mr. Cargo Shorts. What do you think is going to happen here in, like, Shittown, Indiana? Nothing. Go about your business. So like, that's not the person I'm afraid of at all.
Interesting.
And that's the person I'm worried about. I'm worried about the person that's quiet, that's behind the scenes, that's pulling the strings that the publicly powerful people don't even realize are being pulled. Like Donald Trump is not the scary one, even though he does scary things. It's the people that allow him to be in power and that work for him, like Stephen Miller, that are the terrifying ones. Because if it wasn't Trump, it would be some other puppet. And so we shouldn't like sleep on him, but like beware the people that put figureheads in power. And so that's my theory of power.
It's a very good one. All right, y'all. Y'all got some questions? We got a mic in the center of the room. So for those in the room, come to the mic. And Sarah, do we have some questions online? Y'all got
Yes.
questions? Okay.
Yes, we have a lot of amazing questions. Our first question, Dr. Gay. You have traveled and lived in many places. Is there a place where you felt most comfortable?
Yes, I'm actually bi-coastal right now. I live in LA. I'm actually based in LA and my wife is based in New York City, and now we just go back and forth together. I love LA. I chose to live in LA when I started teaching at Purdue because Lafayette, Indiana, I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and so I'm down with the Midwest. I have no problem. I have spent my entire life in predominantly white areas and at predominantly white institutions, so it's all good. I struggled in Indiana. Indiana is different. It's just different. And if you go there, you'll know what I mean immediately. Like, the Klan is very active in central Indiana. They don't hide it. They drive around with their "Don't Tread on Me" flags flying all day, every day. And it's not that I thought anything would happen to me, but I just thought at this stage of my life, where my rent is $1,300 for 3 bedrooms, I can keep this cute little apartment and perhaps only be here twice a week and go somewhere else and be happy. And so I went to LA because there's a direct flight between Indianapolis and Los Angeles on American Airlines and also Southwest, which I don't fly, but that's okay. It's there. And I fell in love with LA. It's extremely diverse. It's so fun. There are all kinds of people, and I live in Inglewood, which is a predominantly Black community. And so for the first time in my life, when I go to Starbucks, the barista is Black, the old men talking about their golf clubs at the table in front of the Starbucks are Black, and so are the women. Everyone I see around me is Black. And then, of course, I see people, Latino people, white people, everyone. It's just a melting pot in a way that I find very appealing. And Inglewood is the best. I don't know how many of y'all have been to Inglewood, but I highly recommend it. It's great there. And I feel home. And even though I'm dorky and I'm from Nebraska, you know, Black people, we're people. Then nobody gives a fuck. They're just like, hey, what's up? What do you want? And then move about your business. And also, I have a great hairstylist. His name is David.
That's the hairstyle, that matters.
Listen,
That matters.
it's
Yes.
rough.
All right. We got folks in the room who want to ask questions. Y'all should come to the mic. Sarah, next question.
Our next question is for both Dr. Gay and Dr. Cooper. What led both of you to identify as feminist and not womanist? Where are the distinctions and points of synergy for the two?
Ooh. Dr. Cooper, tell us now.
I mean, the look you see on my face is I'm like, why Black girls don't want to be feminists? What is wrong? Like, I should probably be more patient, but I'm impatient. Every time I give a talk somewhere, there's a Black girl who is like, why you don't want to be a womanist? And I am like, the definition of womanism per Alice Walker is a womanist is a Black feminist. That is the first line of the definition. So I identify as a Black feminist because I think that Black women should be at the center of their own politics, and we are the only group I know who choose labels based upon whether we're, one, angry with white women, and two, whether or not it will screw our relationships with Black men if we claim it. And that's the negotiation that folks are always making. Your choices about Black feminism versus womanism typically have to do with, well, if I claim feminism, white women can be so terrible and racist, and I don't want to be allied with them. And it's like, well, white women didn't invent feminism. So once you begin from the proposition that they didn't invent it, and in fact that they were following Black freedom movements in the US, and that is the thing that helped them to come to a gender consciousness about the way patriarchy was wrecking their lives, then all of a sudden, you're like, well, why would I leave my intellectual legacy on the table because you are limited in your understanding, right? And so Black women, also, the first time a Black woman described some other Black women as feminists was 1925. Her name was Elise Johnson McDougall. She wrote it in an anthology called The New Negro.
Let me take some notes.
We did not claim this, in like the 1970s or recently. It's been a part of our legacy. And what I want is, look, I don't care, to this point that Dr. Gay talked about early Roxane said, look, you don't have to claim feminism, but you should do feminism. And that is generally my point of view as well. When the revolution comes, I'm not gonna ask you, well, how do you identify? I don't care. Are you trying to get free? You ready to go? Let's go. That's all I care about. But while we're here in this interim period figuring out what freedom is going to look like, I would ask you to consider what are the set of terms that inform your political identification. And if all of it is about grievances on the one hand or making another group comfortable on the other hand, don't begin there. Black girls get to be at the center of their story. And if there's anything that I hope this conversation has conveyed to you tonight, you have Black women writers working and fighting for your right to be at the center of the story. So don't relinquish that in facile debates about why, since white girls don't do right all the time, you don't want to be a feminist. Fuck that.
Damn. I'm just going to copy that down word for word. But my answer is very similar. I don't think we should have to abandon feminism simply because some people have tried to exclude us. That, frankly, just makes me want to be in the room even more. Like that GIF. If you know, you know. We are allowed to center ourselves in any movement that we choose to be a part of. There's nothing wrong with womanism, to be crystal clear, and I think it's great that it exists, but I think that we are already marginalized. Why do we need to further put ourselves on the margins? And I also think that you can be both.
Very good point. Yes. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
So good to see you, Dr. Cooper. Yes. Thank you both for your time. So my question was actually...
Give us your name.
Oh, sorry. My name is Egypt. I'm an alumna, class of 2016, a former student of Dr. Cooper. And so my question was actually in regards to the R.A.G.E lab, and with this topic of doing Black feminism in public, it is like, what is there to look forward to? Like, what other opportunities or what other, I don't know if you have that answer yet, but to continue on this topic, if we want to dive deeper, is there things that you know of that we can look forward to, or other opportunities for us to learn and listen to you all?
Yeah, thank you, Egypt. Egypt was my star student in hip hop feminism, fall 2015. I remember. Oh my God. So R.A.G.E Lab has a few initiatives. So we're going to continue with our lecture series. So there are a couple of events that you'll see in the spring. We're going to run a really cool summer workshop late spring. So May, early June, we're in our planning phase that supports emerging writers, scholars, content creators who want to be doing feminist work in public. And you'll get some executive coaching, you'll take some master classes, and you'll be working on your own projects. So we're going to host that here at Rutgers. And then we're going to do a major convening about the problem of online violence. That's going to happen next fall, but we're going to have an event in the spring leading up to it. And then in the lab, we're going to be working on a large-scale research project to try to think about who is funding and creating these ecosystems that harass Black women online. They are very well organized, they're incredibly dangerous, and they really do make doing this work treacherous. And frankly, I'm tired of people giving Black women hell, and I feel like it's time for us to return fire. So we're going to do that, but we're going to do it through a systematic study of these ecosystems, and we're going to try to build out some digital tools that will help folks. And so we'll have some fellows in the lab. Yeah, so come through. We're figuring it out. This is like a planning, thinking, working it out year, but with some clear kind of goals in mind. Yeah, so thanks for that question. Yeah.
Hi, y'all.
Hi.
Hi, it's good to see you. I'm Deneen. I am excited to just be here. Thank y'all so much for everything you've offered. So I work at a white-led, queer major nonprofit in New York City, and we are on the cusp of getting a new leader. We don't know who it's going to be. It will likely be a person of color. It might be a woman. It might be a trans or gender expansive person. We don't know. And I'm curious, from your perspective, what the role of Black feminism should play, could play, or ought to play in making sure that as an institution, we are prepared to create the conditions for this new leader to succeed.
That's a really important question because so many predominantly white organizations, especially in the past 5 years, including up to now, have sought to diversify by bringing in token people of color to lead organizations, but they have been set up for failure. Oftentimes we're told that it's not a culture fit. And what that means is we thought they would come in and reflect our values and behave the way we wanted them to behave, but instead they were on some other shit and we didn't like it. And I could actually name names of places where this has happened, including to some extent Planned Parenthood, though there were more complications there, but still it happened. And so really make sure that you are bringing that person in because they are the best person for the job, and remind them of that, and remind yourselves of that, because they already know they're the best person for the job, and they are indeed the best person for the job. But the culture of the organization needs to reflect that understanding. Don't tokenize them. Don't make sure like, oh, we're going to put you on the brochure. I'm fortunately at the stage of my academic career where I no longer have to be on the front of the brochure because I hate it. And now when they ask me, I just say no because I'm like, you have 4 faculty of color. How are you going to put me on the brochure, on the front page? That makes it seem like there are a lot of us here. No. And so make sure that you are giving them opportunities to thrive without trying to get cookies publicly for, look, we have a leader of color or a trans leader or whatever. And really look and listen and learn from this person, and also introduce them to the organization. So I'm the president of a board, and one of the things that we do when we bring on new leaders and the organization and new members of the board is we give them a packet introducing them to the organization, to the culture of the board. We have one-on-one interviews with board members in the new leadership so that everyone can get to know each other, hopefully in an organic way, instead of just throwing them in the deep end and expecting them to magically understand the culture, and try to do so in ways where people are allowed to speak freely. So don't have your entire C-suite at the same meeting as your staff necessarily for the getting to know. Let them really get to know the organization. Everybody's got secrets. I actually think I know which organization you work at. And I know all about your search, and I think it's going to be great, and whoever you end up hiring. And so just do everything you can to just welcome them and let them thrive and let them succeed and give them a lot of runway, and make sure that they have a budget, a real budget to do things that they want to do.
Hello.
Hi.
It's so good to see you both. I follow you on social media. I love the work that you do. My name is Medina. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I'm an alumna of TCNJ and NYU. My question is about trap feminism. And I really want to know your thoughts on trap feminism and where there's room for it within the Black feminist arena and space. Like specifically, like there's been a few books that have come out recently, you know, like Bad Girl, Notes from a Trap Feminist, and Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot by like Mickey Kendall. And we all know about like Joan Morgan and the Feminist collection. I just want to ask this question because oftentimes when like, you know, society talks about Black women, and when we talk about Black women in the academy and academia and academic spaces, it's like we are only allowed to show up in one specific way. So I would love to just know your thoughts about this with everything just going on in the culture.
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, I mean, so one, the trap feminist extraordinaire Cecily Bowen lives near here, and so my intention is to have her to come through at some point this year. So that's my first answer about trap feminism. A, bring it, love it. You know, given how much trap music is on rotation in my ride, how could I possibly hate? Yeah, look, what I want is for folks to be able to see how a critique of patriarchy makes their lives better, not how it steals their joy. And what I learned when Joan Morgan coined the term hip-hop feminism was that we didn't have to leave our cultural legacy behind. We could have a complicated relationship to movements. And I also learned that when I read Roxane's Bad Feminist, this kind of permission to exist, you know, like feminism isn't a religion. It isn't a thing that you gotta, you know, it's not a religious identification. It's a mode of thinking about the world that orients you towards freedom, but gives you the space to kind of move in that direction as intentionally as you can. And I think that feminism has a lot to say back to the trap. I think that feminism has a lot to say to the hood. I think feminism has a lot to say back to crunk music. But I also think that feminism is fun and that we have a good time and that being able to put the shit to a dope beat is important, right? People don't want no revolution where they can't dance. Right? Where they can't have pleasure, where they can't have joy. And I love when I would go to academic conferences and then there would be like a party. I feel like I ran into Michelle Stevens at a party or two at an academic conference. And, you know, people would be like, yeah, down with the patriarchy. And then, you know, then later the twerking would start. And I was like, hey, correct, right? Because these things don't have to be in contradiction. And so we want an expansive feminism that allows us to show up. We are not trying to be mean girls, and we are not trying to create like some kind of exclusive sorority or some kind of respectability bullshit. And quite frankly, I'm like, so much of what happens in the music is not, you know, it is reflective of the culture. And so what I love is that you now see these sort of hip hop girls who like have a whole critique of patriarchy in the music, right? Which is real interesting. So I'm here for it.
Yeah, what she said, I think that there's plenty of room at the table, and one of the things that we have to do as Black feminists is recognize that, and like, how dare we become gatekeepers when we have been gatekept so long? I think there's plenty to learn from trap feminists, and Cecily is a badass. I don't know her personally, but I know the hell out of her work. That's and right. Also, Mickey Kendall. Mickey Kendall is, she's got some fight in her, and I learned a lot from Mickey. And one thing I'll say about her, I don't know her personally, but we've tangled online a couple times, but she is down for Black women, 1,000%. That's the center of her moral compass, and it is so rare that Black women are allowed to center Black women in their practice, and she does it, whether it's accepted or not. And we need, frankly, more trap feminists, because it also brings in a set of concerns, because a lot of the prominent Black feminists, and I'll include myself in this, generally tend to come from a certain level of privilege. I mean, that's how you break through oftentimes. And so sure, we can talk about all kinds of things, but are we really speaking for all Black women? Or are we speaking for Black women of a certain economic level? And I try to increasingly be very mindful of that. Like, it's not accidental that I'm here. It truly isn't. My parents fought very hard to give us, my brothers and I, the opportunities to achieve what we have. It was never going to be accidental. And the more I acknowledge that, I think the less pressure there is on other people who are starting from far less and then asking, what am I doing wrong? It's like, you're not doing anything wrong. We live in an unfair world. And trap feminism, I think, accommodates that more than any other.
And I think, too, that part of the draw of us who talked about hip-hop feminism, I grew up working class, and, I mean, grew up working class in the cracked-out 80s in this country, in a family where that's how the men in my family made their money. They were part of the informal economy, also known as the drug economy. That's what they did. And so all of the things that inform that kind of culture around it's like I have a piece on the trap at the CFC Substack. I think it's called Trap Genealogies or something like that. I wrote it like a year ago, but you could go read it. It's a place where I try to talk about like growing up in close proximity to the trap and then being the nerdy black girl that everyone in the family is trying to inoculate from that, from access to that. So I wasn't even fully aware, and then getting to this point and realizing how formative like the war on drugs was to my own childhood and the carceral state and all of those things, which is why I don't know that I could ever have sort of, I guess I could have shown up here and been like, I don't do that but but that feels inauthentic. And the thing that I think that I love about feminism, which is why I'm such a champion for it, is because I think it was the first time when I had black feminist professors, I feel like that was the first time that somebody said, oh, you can be your full self here. Like you can, lose some of the affect. Your goal is not to try to sound like all these white kids in the room. Because so often when we raise black kids in these predominantly white spaces, what we're trying to do is approximate what we think white excellence looks like and prove that we can achieve it, right? And it's like, well, we can achieve it and exceed it, but then after you do all that, what's left, and what's up with your soul? And so I appreciated that like black feminist professors were like, well, what your grandma would tell you about why such and such is acting crazy? Because over here in this world, we call that an epistemology, right? And so my black feminist professors bridge that gap, so that when I would be like, well, they spirit ain't right, my spirit said not them, right? And that's like a valid way to know some shit, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not empirical, but I'm gonna be proven correct because I'm gonna stay away from you, right? And so then you had the language to sort of think about what it was you were doing and to honor that in the space. And also, but that's survival. The ability to know that, to be like, such and such is racist. Because, black people can like see a racist when they walk in the room. We know white people be racist even when they don't know they're racist. We be like, oh, I see, not you, right? And that's survival. But if you're trying to verify that through all of the kinds of critical practices that you've been offered, like you will doubt your own knowing and it will be at your cost. And so feminism gave me the permission to show up in the space and own that unapologetically. All right, this is gonna be our last question.
Hi, good evening. My name is Manasvi. I'm a sophomore at Rutgers. Hi. So I guess my question is more, kind of related to writing and, wanting to get into the world of like writing and publishing and authoring novels and things, which both of you are clearly, experts in, yeah. So I guess, it seems most times that there's one specific story that the world wants to hear, wants to read about, and it doesn't always happen to be the story of like a young woman of color or, a fat girl or anything. So I guess my question would be, what is one thing you would say to someone who wants to, make their voice heard, put their story down on paper, but is worried that no one's gonna want to read it?
I mean, get out of your own way. Truly. I hear where those anxieties, because we all have them, but so many young writers, and when I say young, I'm not talking about age, but level of skill and amount of time writing, they decide that it's impossible. And they put 500 barriers between them and actually even putting one word down. Oh, publishing is corrupt. Oh, this, oh, that, like all of these urban legends. Stop. First of all, you need to write something. Before you can dream of anyone reading it, before you can dream of being published, being a bestseller, whatever the dreams are, and do have dreams, you have to write. A lot of times people come up to me and ask me, how do I get published? And my very first question is, have you written a book? And 70 to 80% of the time, the answer is, oh, not yet, but I want to be prepared. Well, the best way to be prepared is to have written something down on paper. So write the story that you want to write. There is oftentimes, and Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie talks about this in The Danger of a Single Story, and many other writers also engage. When you're a person of color, when you're marginalized in any way, people want one story from you. If you are Black, they want to know about sort of growing up in the hood and knowing struggle and strife and having an absent father, whatever. Or a story about enslavement. If you are Asian, they want to know a story about your great migration to the United States and assimilation. We know that these tropes exist and that publishing tends to prefer them because those are the most palatable stories that reinforce their worldview. But still write the story you want to write. Someone out there will see the value in it and will publish it, and someone else will want to read it. There are so many people who are just looking for a story that tells something new or interesting or relatable or beautiful. And only you can write the novel that you're going to write. And it's going to be amazing because you wrote it, because you have a unique worldview, and everything else you will figure out. Everyone always does. I was just a kid from the Midwest with no sort of connection to publishing, and I literally Googled, how do I find an agent? And then I followed those instructions and found an agent. There was no magic. I didn't have any secret connection. I was getting my PhD at the time and living in Houghton, Michigan, a town of 4,000. I was going hunting with my boyfriend on the weekends and shooting deer. Well, he shot the deer, let me be clear. But I was in the deer blind, looking out at the little deer. Like, oh, Bambi, I'm sorry. And so to be able to get an agent from that circumstance meant that, oh, I might be able to do this. And so really everyone feels lost and feels like their voice will never matter, and that's totally natural. But don't let that control you, and don't let that silence you, because at the end of the day, the only person that can silence you is you.
Word. Bars.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
So I want to end by just offering some thank you. So thank you again to Roxane Gay. Please give it up.
Thank you.
And then some of my people are in the audience, so I'm going to shout them out. So Dr. Anna Branch is y'all's people, but she was my people first. So Dr. Anna Branch is the VP for Equity here at Rutgers, but she's been my friend since college, so she my people. Dr. Shatima Threadcraft and Dr. Melanie Price are the reasons that I wanted to come work at Rutgers. They were here when I got here. They have both since left me to go on to bigger, better things. But they are fellows at Princeton being smart this year, and so they came up. So, hey, y'all, thank you for coming. Thank you so much for being here. I want to give a special thanks to Dr. Michelle Stevens, who runs the Institute for the Study of Global Racial Justice. This event and Michelle's team, particularly Tanya Bentley, it could not have happened without your team, so I am deeply, deeply appreciative of you. And then all of the cool work that we're going to be doing with R.A.G.E Lab right now is supported by the Mellon Foundation, the Ford Foundation, and the Ms. Foundation for Women. So thank you to all of these funders for making work like this possible. And then thank you also to the School of Arts and Sciences, particularly to Humanities Dean Rebecca Walkowitz and her team. Thank you to the Office for Research, particularly Jose Roman and his team, including Justin Smolowitz, who helps me put all my budgets together. And then thank you to my department. Thank you again to Ethel Brooks just for her support and her advocacy. And I also want to just shout out Rebecca Mark, who heads the Institute
for women's leadership, and who has been on the front lines of making sure that feminism does not just live in the classroom here, but also lives in opportunities for our students and for our community, and who helps to house and raise money for the Gloria Steinem Chair, the IWL Leadership Scholars. All of the programs that they do at the IWL are incredibly significant. And so that all means that if you want to come learn about how to do feminism and live a feminist life, this is a great place to be. So come through, right? Take a class, hit me up about the R.A.G.E lab. I'm figuring it out. Don't send me too many emails, but I'm gonna let y'all know what's going on. And come get plugged in because we have a community of folks who are really committed to doing this work, and we would love to see you, all right? All right, cheers. Oh, I almost screwed up real bad. Sarah Ann Gresham, stand up, stand up. The other person, the main person who booked this room, got that Zoom working, got us all here together, and literally handled every single detail of this event is my graduate student, Sarah Gresham.
Also her shoes. She's wearing amazing shoes.
I mean, look, the shoes are bad too. The whole outfit bad, girl. But Sarah is a brilliant scholar in her own right and is in the thick of preparing for qualifying exams and has been helping me launch my thing. And we had strikes at this university last spring that were all about making sure that we value the labor of adjunct faculty and graduate student workers. And so I also want to shout out Nahal Nasser and David Correa, who are grad students. Stand up, y'all. Because they were runners who helped to make this event possible. Thank y'all. They too are brilliant and also actively working on getting PhDs, and they made time to make sure that this program happened. We have to be in solidarity with everybody. We have labor movements happening all over the country, not the least of which on our campus, and I try to be a professor committed to not exploiting my graduate students, so I'm deeply thankful for your time. Thank you to the folks who provided security, and thank you to the event staff here who are also holding down the back table for making this happen. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you. All right. Good night, everybody. Be safe.